Hey, songwriters, welcome to lesson 3. This week we're talking about writing melodies. So, in this lesson, we are going to learn how to write a melody line over a specific chord progression, and we're going to learn how to use Soundtrap as a tool so that we can hear and demo melodies as we create them. So, first off, what is a melody? So a melody is a sequence of pitches arranged in a rhythm. So really basically, it's just a string of notes. In most songs, you're going to hear this sung as a lyric line. You know, if we think about how the pitches change as singers go through their lyrics, that is a melody. It could also be on an instrument, anything that is pitches, basically. Let's talk about pitch. And so pitch, the important thing in a melody is that it's moving, right? And it can move in either steps or skips. So when we talk about a pitch moving in steps, it's moving from one note to the next note in a scale. So something like this. Those would be steps. And skips are just what they sound like, right? We're skipping over notes. And this doesn't have to be any specific distance. It's just more than one note distance, right? So something like this has a lot of skips in it, right? Melodies that use mostly steps we talk about as being stepwise, and those with mostly skips, you might have guessed it, are described as skipwise. So it can be helpful when you're thinking about creating a melody, you know, do I want this to be more step heavy, or I do want it to be more skip heavy? And that can kind of guide how you're going to write it. All right, let's talk about rhythm. So when we range notes, right, if we just have a string of pitches, it doesn't really mean much unless we're putting them in a specific timing, all right? And the same notes in a different timing can sound very different. So here are 4 different ways that are arranging 4 notes. Up here, you see them as we would write them on a musical staff, but then down below, this is how they would look in Soundtrap. And you can see they align, right? Where these bigger notes, these represent the quarters, even longer ones are the halves, right? So you can kind of see it. But let's go ahead and listen to it. So this is what those rhythms sound like when they're played out. Right, and now that is just rhythmic variations with no pitch difference. So we could call that a melody, it's just not a particularly interesting one. Now we're going to go through how we would match up a melody with a chord. So we're taking that string of notes, we're arranging it in time, and now we want to connect it to the chord progressions that we have written. So if you just kind of do random notes over a chord progression, there's a chance that it might feel kind of disconnected. And so the way that we connect them up is by targeting chord tones. So what targeting chord tones is, let's look at this a bit. So we have a really basic chord progression here. We have C, F, C, and G. And down below it, we'll just put a little bit of a row of notes. So let's look at, these are the notes that make up the chord. These are our targets. So in a C chord, it's made up of a C, an E, a G, and another C, right? As many C's as we want. And same for the F, right? C, F, A, and same for the G, G, B, D. So why this is necessary is, so when we talk about targeting chord tones, we're going to build our melodies to be centered around these notes. So a lot of times we're starting on these notes, we're going in the direction of these notes. Think of them as if they're real heavy and they're pulling the melody line towards them. Now, obviously you can deviate. You don't need to only play these notes. That would also be a bit boring. But if we put emphasis on these chord tones, we're going to connect it up very nicely. So when I'm writing a melody, sometimes I like to picture the contour of the melody, and you get a really nice visual representation of what it might look like. So if I look at over here at this C, if I want to make a melody that starts at the E, it goes down, up, down, right? I can kind of imagine how that's going to sound. And we'll fill those in for the other ones, right? And this is just a visual contour of a melody that is targeting chord tones, right? Every single one of these starts on it, and they're going in the direction of the next chord tone, right? So this E, down, up, down, but then it's going to go in the direction of the C. The C leads it up to the E. Da, da, da. This one is the only skip. We skip up to the G, but then this line leads us back to another chord tone. So we're starting with chord tones. We're going in the direction of chord tones. We're really emphasizing that. So let's go ahead and we're going to switch over to Soundtrap. We're going to demo it. We're going to see if we can get that melody into Soundtrap sounding good. Here we are in Soundtrap. I already have the chord progression put in for us. It sounds like this. And then it does the same thing again. So before we get into this, if you don't have that window, the note editor, how you pull that up is you go to a note roll and you're just going to double click and it'll pull it up. So if I wanted to do that from scratch, I could go new track, pick my instrument, and then if I just click on a box here on the roll, it'll make one for me. But let's go to this one that I made already. And let's also look over here. So these are going to be really nice for helping us click in notes. So we have a selection tool. This is just going to let us box notes and select them if we want to delete a whole bunch at a time or move a whole bunch. This is our note input tool, the little pencil, and this is going to let us click in the notes. Now, those are probably the two most important ones. Velocity lets you change the volume of the notes, and erase notes is also a selection tool that helps you clear them out. So let's think back to that little contour that we drew earlier. And so I'm going to go to my note editing tool. So what I had is we started on the E, we went down, we went back up, and then we went back down. And the great thing about Soundtrap is now we can listen to it and see what this sounds like. Right? We could totally leave it like that. Or we can start playing with some different rhythms. So maybe I'm just clicking and dragging to make those quieter. Maybe we try something like this. How does that sound? That could work. Maybe, I think when I was playing this on the piano earlier, it was maybe coming out something like... Yeah, all right. So that's kind of what I was hearing earlier. Now, I have these chord tones put in here to help visualize our targets, but once we write our melody, we can clear those out. We just hear this. All right. Now, our next one was walking down from here, and let's just try this one in quarter notes. So let's go ahead, and it's important to note here that on our piano roll, if we're doing this in C major, we want to just be ignoring all of these darker ones. These are the ones connected to the black keys, and those are going to be outside of C major, which will sound a little bit harsh. So if we just stick on the lighter pink ones, then we should be good to go. All right, let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, nice. Now, I kind of want to repeat that first phrase. So the nice thing about this is I can just copy it. Then I take my little purple marker, move it to the spot I want to drop it, and then Control V and drop it in. Cool. And then this one started from the G and was walking down from there. So we'll just go G, F, E, D. Let's see what that sounds like. Very nice. That totally works. So this is just one example of how you could go through and make a melody. You could do things to make it a little bit fancier. You could put in maybe a drum pattern, something like this. And check it out already. We have something that sounds a little more like a real song going on. We could change this instrument. So we can try putting our melody in a different instrument. We can add some drums, play around with it. And the important part of this is being able to understand the targets, understand how we're connecting it to the chord progression, and make a melody that sounds good, right? If it sounds good, it's good. All right, guys, so that's going to conclude the video on melody, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.